follow suit. So if the UK realizes that the US can do this, then the UK will do it. Then Denmark will do it. Then France will do it. Then Australia will do it. Then...
Hi everyone. All right, so I am going to let Fidel and Steve are talking right now. I'm going to give them a couple of minutes, and I also am asking if you would be willing to share this around, and particularly around to the groups that need to learn, that don't know about this and need to learn it. So MMT for Real Progressives, they know all about it. So, you know, groups that need to learn about this, I'd appreciate you sharing it around. We're going to give Fidel and Steve a little bit of time to finish as well, but we're going to take this time to share around. I appreciate you doing that. So I'm going to do it as well. Hi everyone, we're going to take a few minutes and share around, and also hopefully give Fidel and Steve a couple of minutes to finish what they're doing. So I would appreciate your assistance in sharing this around, and I'm sure Steve and Fidel are going to get finished any minute now. I'm not going to wait that long, but give them a little bit of a chance. So I appreciate your sharing this around to groups that you want to learn this, that you want to learn money, that they should learn modern money. Thank you. Thank you, Mikhail Mike. Good to see you. Oops. Just a couple more minutes. I actually don't know if at the moment if Fidel and Steve are still going. I believe they still are. I'm going to start in just a moment. I appreciate you being patient and sharing this around. Also giving Fidel Kaboub and Steve Grumbine to a couple of minutes to finish what they're doing. And hopefully we won't have conflicting live streams here. All right, so are Steve and Fidel still going? Let's see. Okay, they're still going. Just give it a moment, and then we'll get started. I wish I was watching that. I don't want to conflict with them, but also I committed to starting, so we had a little bit of a scheduling confusion. So forgive this overlap here. Okay. All right, thank you for your patience. They are still going, but I don't want to keep people waiting that long. It's been 6 minutes. They are at the hour mark, so I'm sure that they're going to be ending soon. So I'll talk for a moment, and I'd appreciate a heads up if someone realizes that Steve and Fidel are done. But I am going to be teaching someone MMT for an hour on Wednesday. So this is my rehearsal. I've been writing lots of notes. So this is my rehearsal for doing that. I'm sure I'm going to have some bumps. I'm going to be very grateful for some input that people have as far as corrections. Oops. Here we go. So I want to thank my teacher, my first teacher, who is Geoff Ginter. He did a deep dive, grabbed my hand, and then jumped off a cliff and did a deep dive with me into MMT. Had no idea really what it was. This was back in February. It is now a major part of my life, teaching others this. And actually, I also want to thank Kim Niles, who's a longtime Citizens Media TV follower, who just took a leap of faith and allowed me to teach her Modern Money, and we spoke for, I think, 2 hours, and that podcast is going to be released tomorrow. So since talking with her, I wrote some notes, and I'm trying to get this a little more solid. This is sort of this is written with the anticipation of talking to someone directly, so they can ask me questions and we can have feed off of each other. Obviously, that's not the case here, but also part of me wants to make this into a lecture too. So obviously, this is going to be a mixture of the two. I really look forward to your comments and corrections and questions, and we'll do what we can. But there is a lot to say. So there are two, as far as I'm concerned, I believe there are two levels of learning MMT. I like to say modern money to get away from the theory, nonsense, misunderstanding. So there are two levels of learning MMT, learning modern money. And I am really good at teaching, or I feel like I'm getting pretty good at teaching the first level. The second level requires a deep knowledge. I don't have a deep knowledge. I've been studying this since February. So I'm obviously not an economist. I'm a student of economists. Stephanie Kelton, Fidel Kaboub, Pavlina Cherneva, William Mitchell, Randall Ray. These are the people I look up to. These are the people I learn from. What I'm good at is this first level of teaching, which is undoing all of the miseducation that we have been taught for our whole lives. So teaching modern money is complicated significantly, substantially, because of how miseducated we all are. So the first level is getting through these first mind benders, taking your mind away from what we know, changing it to what it actually is. And then once you get beyond that initial hump, then learning the advanced stuff is nothing. It takes time, it takes patience, but it's no more mind benders like this. It's you get through that first hump, and now you can go with that deeper knowledge. I can't teach that deeper knowledge. I don't know it yet. I'm just learning the basics of that. And in fact, when I teach someone this first level, I can't handle lots of skepticism and debate. I don't have that kind of a knowledge to be able to do that. So I was talking to someone a week or 2 weeks ago, and they asked me, what's MMT, and I said it, and they were confident in Tothian. Whoa, nice to see you here. So I was talking to someone who I asked if they knew MMT, and they said yes, and it was cool. And I said, the government makes its own money. Federal taxes do not fund federal spending. And he said, yeah, that's true. But then he went into, well, what about the Federal Reserve? They can raise interest rates and all this stuff. And it was just a lot of skepticism. And the conversation ended because I can't handle that kind of skepticism. I haven't studied those outliers. I know that they don't quite affect it, but I can't articulate how. So in this lesson, to the people that don't know this very well, but think they know what they know, they're confident in what they know, I need you to have an open mind during this conversation. And yes, when I have taught you, when you've learned what I have to teach you, then I'm going to pass you off to Geoff Ginter and to all these other people, and they can teach you all the deeper stuff. I can teach you this first level. But I can't handle a debate. So when I'm talking with someone, I'm going to tell them I can't handle it. I need to have you with an open mind, asking questions with an open mind while we're talking. After we're done talking, you should be skeptical. You should do your homework. You should find out the truth for yourself. But here is just with an open mind. So with that said, this is how we start. This is how I want to start. I want to start with the pony question. I want to take this, you want everybody to have a pony. Oh, that's really nice, but how are you going to pay for it? So I want to take that question very seriously just to start. And then we're going to get into, more specific modern money stuff. So you want everyone to have a pony. Oh, that's great, but how are you going to pay for it? Let's set aside how you're going to pay for it. Let's just pretend the government can and wants to pay for it totally. It can be paid for, not a problem. They pass the pony bill. Everybody in the country can get a pony. My question to you is, can everyone have a pony by tomorrow? Can everyone have a pony by next week? I can tell you that it is absolutely true. You're going to get a pony whether you like one or not, Geoff. I can tell you for certain that it is possible for everyone in the entire country to have a pony, an actual literal pony in their backyard. It is absolutely possible, logistically possible. But it is not possible by tomorrow. It is not possible by next week. And I want to ask you why. And I know a lot of people in the audience know, but when I'm in person, that's what I'm going to ask. So why is it not possible to give everyone a pony by tomorrow? Because I'm telling you that it is possible to give everyone a pony, an actual pony, but not by tomorrow, not by next week. So why? The reason is because there aren't 320, however many people in the country, there aren't 320 million ponies in the country available right now, distributed all around the country so people can go to the pony stores and pick up their pony and take him home. So we could write a bill for $5 billion called the Pony Bill, but we need to consider what it would take to actually get 320 million ponies into the hands, to the homes of of every single American. And what does that take? That takes mommy and daddy ponies doing their thing. That takes people handling those ponies, breeding them, veterinarians to take care of them, land all over the country because they need to be distributed all over the country. It takes the food. It takes the supplies, it takes the structures, the gates and the shelters. It takes all of these things in consideration of the entire country. And the most important point is they need time. So how long does it take with our current supply of ponies to distribute them around the country, to have them do their things, to birth new ponies, such that however many times is necessary so that we get 320 million ponies? I can only guess that that's something like 2 to 5 years. So I'll say 5 years. So we can create a bill to give everyone a pony as long as we give it the proper amount of time so they can start growing. Then there's the question of distribution. People have to go to the stores, pick up their ponies. They have to have something at their house in order to handle that pony. They have to be trained. They have to have the food. They have to have access to veterinarian care and supplies and people that can give them assistance throughout the whole life cycle of birthing and owning a pony. And even the death, how to dispose of a dead pony. I hadn't thought of that before. So the point is that we can do in this country whatever we want to do. If we want to give everyone a pony, which is absolutely ridiculous, but if we wanted to, we could. We could do it in the reasonable amount of time that it would take to create and distribute all of those ponies. Okay? So we're talking about real resources here. Ponies, land, food, services, labor, veterinarians, and so on, and time. Okay. So let's set one more point about that, which is if we said everyone could have a pony that tomorrow, sure, we could try that, or next week, but it would not be very successful. So we'd give $5 billion to the American population, go for your pony, go get your pony. There's only, 100,000 ponies, so there's incredible demand for this very small amount of ponies. So that is what would cause prices to skyrocket, and that's what causes inflation. So spending $5 billion in a small, inappropriate amount of time is inflationary. So you should not spend more than your productive capacity, the number of actual resources that you have. You should not spend more than your productive capacity can handle. So this requires time. So 5 years. Okay. So now, again, I'm a student of economists. I'm not an economist, so I have a very good beginning knowledge of this. But you are going to exceed what I can teach you rather quickly, not within this conversation. We have definitely a good hour or so to talk about. But after this, you're going to exceed it pretty quickly, and there are plenty of people that are ready to talk to you and teach you the more advanced stuff. So this is the most important message I want to get across. And to those who don't understand modern money, this is not going to be very clear to begin with. And what that is, I'm going to say it at the end again, and then I'm hoping it's going to be clear. Because to me, there is nothing more important than what I'm about to say. This is the problem. This is the biggest roadblock, biggest problem, biggest misconception that the progressive movement has. This is how the progressive movement shoots them in the foot. The vast majority of who we consider true progressives shoot them in the foot. And that is we should absolutely be fighting against the injustices in our country, excessive military, excessive income inequality, endless war, in my opinion, the wall, Trump's wall. We should be fighting against these things. But we should be fighting against these things because they are immoral and unjust and wrong. Part 2 is we should be fighting for Medicare for all and a living wage and free college and forgiving student debt. We should be fighting for that as well. But we should not be fighting for these things because they're affordable. We should be fighting for these things because they're right and just and moral. Excuse me for a moment. So that's number 2. So fighting against immoral stuff because it's immoral. Fighting for moral stuff because it's moral, not because it's affordable. And the most important thing is that we must stop fighting for immoral stuff, fighting against immoral stuff, taxing the rich, decreasing the military. We must stop fighting immoral stuff because we need that money to instead be used for programs for the powerless, Medicare for all, and so on. If we do not separate these fights, we will never, ever get what we preach about, what we use almost all of our energy to preach about. Medicare for all and all that stuff. We will never get it if we link these two fights together. So you should fight against immoral stuff, you should fight for moral stuff, but you must consider these two separate fights. You have got to stop saying, we need to stop this endless war and this excessive military because we need the money to instead help Flint and the powerless and poverty and homelessness. We can do both at the same time, okay? So I know that that doesn't make quite as much sense as it should if you don't know modern money, but I'm going to come back to this at the end, and I'm going to say that again, because that to me is the most important thing that we need to do as progressives. Okay, so you have a dollar bill in your pocket. Take out that dollar bill and tell me, where does it come from? Where does that dollar bill come from? So you might say, well, I got a paycheck, so it comes from my company. And then I will ask you, okay, well, where did that company get it? Well, they might say, well, they got it from sales from the public. The public bought their products. Okay, where did the public get their, where do those customers get the money from? And so on and so on and so on and so on. Their job and their job and their job. And ultimately it gets from a company, and ultimately the answer is, they might say the Federal Reserve. And then I would say, who instructed the Federal Reserve? The answer is the Treasury. And then who instructed them? And that is Congress, because they wrote a bill and they passed it into law, and that bill had some number in it, $5 billion for the pony law. And so going backwards, Congress wrote a bill, passed it into law, wrote the number $5 billion in there. Once it gets into law, it instructs the Treasury, instructs the Federal Reserve, goes down to the state reserves, goes to the banks, goes to the people. So the answer is the United States Congress. Where it ultimately comes from is the United States Congress. And every time I say this, I think of Geoff, which is Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution is what gives the Congress the power to do that. And most importantly, only gives the Congress. Only the Congress has the power to create the dollar, the United States dollar. They are the monopoly currency issuer. Everyone except for the federal government, the United States Congress, everyone else in the country is a currency user. There is no one else in the world that is allowed to create the United States dollar. So, if the Congress is the only entity in the world that can create the dollar, then does it need any income? If they are the only ones in the world that have the permission to create the dollar, just like a child can write $1 trillion bill on a piece of paper and they're the only ones in the world that are allowed to do that, is there any need for the United States, the federal government, to have income? And the answer is, of course, no. If they can create the dollar out of thin air, then they do not need any income. Do they need to borrow anything? Do they need to borrow in order to be able to pay for federal programs? In order to spend for federal programs? And it's a nonsensical question, because if the United States Congress can create the dollar and no one else is allowed to create the dollar, they could try, but they'll go to federal prison for counterfeiting. If they're the only ones in the world that can create the dollar, and they can create it at a whim, on a whim, they can create an infinite amount of money, as we spoke about with the pony question. They shouldn't. They should do it responsibly to avoid inflation, but they absolutely could create the dollar infinitely, and nobody else in the world is allowed to do that. So what does it mean to borrow something that only you are allowed to make, and you can make it on a whim? So what does it mean to borrow it? When the Philadelphia Phillies are playing a game, they don't run out of points and have to call up the Pittsburgh Pirates in order to borrow some points in order to put some scores on the board. That makes no sense. And it also makes no sense in a very similar way, that the United States government does not need to borrow from anybody else, because nobody else in the world makes the dollar, and they can do it whenever they want. Okay, so the United States Congress makes its own money, does not need any income, does not need any revenue, does not need to borrow for the purpose of spending. So if it needs no income, then why does it collect taxes? If I'm the federal government, I can make the money whenever I want to. Why would I collect taxes if I don't need to spend any money? If I don't need that to spend on federal programs, because I can create the currency. So federal taxes, and again, we're only talking about the federal level here. Federal taxes, collecting federal taxes are very important, but they are not because the federal government needs income. So why do they collect taxes if they don't need the income? I don't know the answer to the borrowing part. I think it's some accounting tricks and some other stuff. I don't know the answer to that yet, but I know it's not because they need the income. I know it's not because they need that money in order to do stuff for the people. But the reasons that they tax, okay, there are 3 reasons that they tax. The first reason, let me see if I've missed anything here, excuse me. Oops. Actually, let me pause here and see if there's any questions. Adrian Ashley! Adrian is the person who is the reason that Citizens Media TV exists. Very nice to see you. I miss you. Okay. So let's see if there's any questions. I'm really glad to see Tothian here. I am really glad to see Adrian Ashley here. Very nice surprise. Thank you, Geoff, for the kind words. Perhaps I need a better depth of knowledge. No, I know exactly what I know and what I don't know, and I'm not going to teach I'm not going to pretend that I don't know something. So I'm sorry, but I disagree with that. I don't think I have to get a depth of knowledge before I jump into teaching. I just don't teach what I don't know, and I'm open and honest about it. Thank you, Stan. Very nice. Let me see. Any questions? Does it have to be a pony or can it be a small horse? Okay, I'm assuming that's a joke. Okay, I don't see any questions. Oh man, this is just too much. I don't want to waste that much time looking through here. Okay. All right, so the 3 reasons that, let me see. Yeah, there are 3 reasons why the federal government collects taxes, and they're all really important. But none of those reasons are because it needs money. Reason number 1 is to control inflation. And I gave that example at the beginning with the ponies, that if you say we're going to give $5 billion to the people in order to create and buy ponies, and we're going to do it by tomorrow or next week, that is going to cause inflation because we do not have the productive capacity in order to handle that. So the small amount of ponies that there are, they can't breed fast enough for every single person, and prices are going to skyrocket. So that is an inappropriate way. That is a perfect way to create hyperinflation. So taxes are a way to control inflation, and another perfect example of this is war bonds. So during World War II, no cars were made, because all of that material, all of those real resources were used instead for tanks and planes and ships and so on, and artillery. So not a single car, as I understand it, not a single car during World War II was created. But people's money, the money that everybody had in their savings and investment in their pockets, didn't change. So this was a significant potential inflation scare. So there are only 2 things you can do to control inflation in this situation, which is either raise the supply, create new cars, which during World War II was not an option because we had to make stuff for the war effort, or decrease inflation, decrease demand. So we can increase supply or decrease some demand, or some combination of the 2. During World War II, it was not possible to increase supply, so they had to decrease demand. And how did they do that? One of the major tools that they used to do this was war bonds. They offered the people bonds to, what they said was, to support the troops, to support the war effort. So they told the people, you support the troops, you support the war effort, give us however much money you want, we will give it back to you, we will use it for the war, use it for the troops, and then in 10 years from now, we will give it back to you with a 5% bonus. So what this did was it reduced demand. The federal government didn't use this money for anything. The only thing they used it for was to reduce demand, was to take money out of the people's pockets in a non-coercive way, in a voluntary way, giving them a little bit of incentive with a bonus to take money out of the economy. That's all it did. It reduced demand by temporarily taking money out of the people's pockets. And taxes are the same thing, except it's never given back. And there's no bonus. And it's coercive. You don't do it, you go to jail. Okay, so reason number one for collecting federal taxes is to control inflation. Reason number two is to make moral decisions. So if we had the ideal government, for my opinion, there would be taxes on vices, cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, gambling, and there would be taxes on the wealthy. There would be, I'll just stick with that right now, but things that we want to discourage, we will increase the taxes for. Polluting activities that pollute, we increase the taxes for that. We increase the taxes on the wealthy to discourage them from being so wealthy. We don't decrease the taxes on the wealthy because we need their money. And just like I said in the beginning example, not the pony one, but the one about we fight against and we fight against injustices, we fight for the powerless, but we must not merge or join or tether these two fights together. We want it's okay that the rich are 100 times, 300 times, whatever, more than the rest of the country. It is not okay that the rich are 5,000 times richer than the rest of the country. They're so rich that they can buy the government with their pocket change and then create the laws which make it even easier to even more inequality, by representatives even more effectively. That's not saying it elegantly. And it creates a cycle that increases inequality because they can buy the politicians, create the laws that benefit them, make it even easier to buy the politicians, and so on. So we tax the wealthy because inequality is immoral at that particular level. So moral decisions, that's number two. So controlling inflation and moral decisions is number two. And before I get into reason number three, I'm going to take one more look at questions. I really wish you'd go somewhere else. It's hard and very distracting. Let me see. Originally, taxes on income were intended to be investment. Labor was never intended to be considered income. Okay. We do not have to discourage people from being wealthy. Just discourage them from being so wealthy that it's on the backs of others, that it starts hurting others. I'm not saying that elegantly, but that's what it's about. You can be as wealthy as you like as long as you don't hurt others in the process. Thank you, Adrian. Very nice to hear that. I don't see any questions, and actually it's actually just so much feedback that it's hard to filter through it, and I don't want to waste your time looking through all of that. But I'm very grateful for all the feedback. I look forward to looking into this afterwards. Okay, so controlling inflation, moral decisions, and then reason number three for collecting taxes at the federal level, collecting federal taxes. And reason number three is the most mind-bending thing of all for those who, just simply haven't been taught. And that is to drive the currency, drive the economy. And what does that mean? And this, I am now using an example of my boys with allowance. So let me give you an example. So I'm a father. I have two little boys. They're just about to be 12 and 9, and they have chores. And so they go around and they say to each other, little one goes to the big one, and he shouldn't do this, but he'll say to the older one, "Will you please do my homework? If you do my homework, I'll make your bed for the next 3 days." Okay? The big one goes to the little one, "Can you take out the trash for me? I'll let you use my iPad for 30 minutes. And so they trade with each other. They barter. And then I come in and I get my old boxes of business cards. It's just boxes and boxes of old business cards. And I give each of them, I wouldn't normally give equal, but just for the sake of this, to make it easier, I give each of them 10 business cards a week. And they look at me and they go, what do I care about your business cards? And I say, well, you could use these to buy things from each other if you want. And they'll go, well, why can't we just ask things from each other? And then I say, and when I give you allowance next time, you need to give me 3 business cards. And they say, well, I don't care about your business cards. I don't want to do that. And so I say, okay, if you don't give me 3 business cards, then you're going to be grounded for a month. And then the older one says, well, let's just go to the copy shop and copy center, and we'll make our own business cards. And I go, okay, well then you'll be grounded for 6 months. And now they care about business cards. Now they care about business cards. And now, instead of the little one saying, do my homework and I'll make your bed for 3 days, now the little one might say, do my homework and I'll give you 2 business cards. Now the older one might say, take out the trash for me, I'll give you 2 business cards. Do this big chore for me, I'll give you 3 business cards. And now they care about business cards. Now they care about the money because I'm taxing them. And that drives the economy, it drives the currency. And because it's illegal to make their own, they have no choice. So this is a non-coercive way of forcing the people to use your money. And now instead of bartering, now that it's been chopped in half with money. So I give you this, I give you some money. You give me this, I give you some money. So it's no longer you do this for me and I'll do this for you. Now there's an intermediary, which is currency. So it drives the currency. What do my children care about? They care about the money. They care about the business cards. What do I care about? I care about my children's labor. And this analogy doesn't extend this far, but I care about, the cleaning products in my house and supplies in my house. But mostly I care about my children's labor. I care about the real resources available to me. So the federal government creates the currency, taxes the people, which makes counterfeiting illegal. You go to federal prison if you try. And then drives the currency, which makes the people all of a sudden care about money. But as the federal government, I don't care about the money. Excuse me. I don't care about the money. I care about the real resources in the country. I care about the people. I care about the things in the ground, the things that are growing. I care about the animals, and I care about the time available to do things. I, as the federal government, do not care about the money because I don't need it and I don't use it. The only thing I use it for is to, I guess you say, control the people. I give it to the people to do what they need to do, what I need them to do. So, the mechanics of how this works. Let me take a look. Child labor laws, yeah, okay, thanks. Yes, I wish that I could get corrections on the fly, but there's so much going on in this feedback, it's really hard to keep up. But I am doing the best I can, and I'm trying not to go farther than I know that I understand, and I hope I'm getting it right, and I'll do better next time. Okay, so the mechanics. So how is money created? And I said this high speed before. The money is created because the Congress spends it. So when I go to a store and I have $1 and I spend it, I didn't create the money by doing that. That doesn't make sense. I had to get it from somewhere. I'm a currency user, so I had to get it from my job or from, my parents' as allowance or whatever it is. So I cannot create. I have to get money before I can spend it. But when the federal government creates money, that is exactly the same thing as saying that the federal government spends money. So it is exactly the same thing to say that the federal government spends money and it creates money. It spends money into existence. How does it do that? It creates a law. It writes a bill. Congress writes a bill. The Pony Bill, Medicare for All, they write $1 trillion for infrastructure. They simply write the number $1 trillion, and it's all apportioned to different companies around the country. Actually, I should emphasize, federal government is the monopoly currency issuer. States, municipalities, individuals, households, and companies are all currency users. So states and municipalities, they need income because they can't create the currency. They're no different than households and companies. Okay, so they write this $1 trillion infrastructure bill. They write the number $1 trillion. $300 million goes to California to this particular company because they need something there. They're going to do something there. Another company in Oregon, and so on and so on. The bill passes into law. That instructs the Treasury to instruct the Federal Reserve to create a new line in almost literally a spreadsheet in new infrastructure law, $1 trillion. And then that's broken down into $300 million to California, this company, and so on and so on and so on. Then that money, then the state reserves are instructed to create those subsets. Then it goes to the local branches, and then it goes to the companies that actually implement or do make that bill come to life. So it actually goes to a local Wells Fargo in California, which that company has an account in, and $300 are deposited into that account. The number just goes up by $300 million because the government said to do it. So that's the mechanics of it. I'm sure I'm missing small details here, but I think that's pretty close. So what happens? Thank you, Phil. Very nice. So what happens, what actually mechanically, logistically happens when taxes are collected? So when you pay your taxes, if you pay with cash, actual dollar bills, and you mail it into the government, it is literally shredded. They don't need it. It's literally put into a shredder, destroyed. If you pay the much more normal way, the much more common way, electronically, by authorizing your bank to pay your taxes, this is not exactly what happens, but this is really close to what happens, and that is, if I pay $1,000 in taxes, federal taxes, I am authorizing the federal government to reach into my bank account and to simply decrease my number by $1,000. So if I have $5,000 in my bank account, I am authorized, and I pay $1,000 in federal taxes in April, I am authorizing the federal government to reach into my bank account and to decrease my total balance from $5,000 to $4,000. They don't do anything with it. They don't need it. They don't increase anything on their side by $1,000. They don't need it. They actually reach into my bank account and decrease it by whatever that amount is. Okay. I'm going to take a break, look through, see if there's anything obvious that I can address here. Yes, I am absolutely. There's a monetary MMT forum, whatever it is, in New York in September. Registration starts on July 1st. I'm very excited. I'm going to really try and go to that. You can buy shredded money as a souvenir, Dave Pilkington says. Really? Interesting. Aaron, I hope you think I'm doing all right here. Thank you. I appreciate hearing that after what you first said. Dang, I missed something. I don't see any questions. Thank you, Geoff. So I'm not messing up too horribly. So that's good. Okay, yeah, I mean, this is going to be so different when I'm actually talking to someone. So, I mean, it's interesting to me. I want to make this into I really want to be able to teach people one-on-one and in a conference kind of a thing, interactively. But part of me also wants to teach it as a lecture a little bit. So this is sort of practice for both. But I was really scrambling to put this together. There's a lot of stuff to say and the sequence of designing it, how I want to say it, and so on. But, okay. So now we've done the mechanics, we've done The federal government doesn't need any income. It doesn't use any money itself. It gives it to the people for a purpose. It collects it from the people for a purpose, but it doesn't use any money for itself. So now I want to go into the big myths and misconceptions. So we have the debt, the national debt and its interest. We have the balanced budget amendment. We have the surplus. We have the deficit. And everything we hear about these things, less the debt, put that aside for a moment, but everything we hear about the balanced budget and the surplus and the deficit are absolutely opposite world. Absolutely the opposite. What the news and the politicians tell us about the deficit and the surplus and the balanced budget amendment is opposite world. So they say the deficit is irresponsible. It is irresponsible for the federal government to run a deficit. Why? Because we should not be spending more money than we take in. And as we have just determined, the federal government doesn't need any income. So to even say it is irresponsible to spend more as the federal government, it is irresponsible for us to spend more than we take in, is utter nonsense, because they don't take in anything in order to use that money to spend. They don't need income. They don't use the currency for themselves. So the deficit is absolutely critical if you want the people to have things. So we'll go back to that. Surplus. The surplus from national government is the responsible thing to do. We are spending less than we take in, so we're saving. The balanced budget that's responsible too, because we are not spending beyond our means. We are spending exactly as much as we take in. All of these things make no sense when you understand modern money, because the government doesn't need to take anything in. Find money. What it is doing, it is taking how households and individuals and states and municipalities and companies, they truly do need to be responsible. They truly cannot, in many situations, run a deficit. They have to have income before they can spend it. They should not live beyond their means. But for the federal government to say this, to pretend that the federal government is in the same situation as states and companies and municipalities and households and individuals, to say that's misleading is an understatement. That would be a massive understatement. So, I'm going to tell you a balanced budget amendment. Well, actually, let me go back to the debt. If you can create your own currency, if you can create your own money infinitely, at a whim, whenever you wanted to, yes, you should do it responsibly, as we spoke about before. You shouldn't create inflation. You shouldn't spend beyond your productive capacity. But if you can create the money whenever you want, for whatever you want, as much as you want, what does it even mean to be in debt? In debt to who? In debt to who? You hear, oh, we've got to borrow from China. Borrow from China. They don't make the dollar. We make the dollar. We gave them the dollar to begin with. What do we need to borrow for? We can create it just like a child writes $1 trillion bill onto a piece of construction paper. What do we need to borrow if we're the only ones that can create it, and we can create it whenever we want? It's just a game. It's a social construct. It's a decision. So to say that we're in debt, that we are going to crush future generations, that they're going to be crushed under this debt and paying, whatever that silly clock in Times Square, that we have $21 trillion in debt, and that's $60,000 for every man, woman, and child in the country. I don't know this as thoroughly, so I'm going to have to stop this part, but it is utter nonsense. The debt is the money since the beginning of time that this government has spent into existence that it hasn't taxed back. So that money is sitting in investments or in the people's pockets, and that's a good thing. So if to say that, for example, and I don't know this in depth, but just to touch on it, if China said, they have $5 trillion in U.S. treasuries or whatever it is, they had $5 trillion invested in the United States. They come tomorrow and they say, I want all $5 trillion in some sinister effort to hurt our country. But does that really matter? So we say, as Geoff just taught me last night, we could say, no, I'll give it to you over the next 2 years or something like that, or I'll give it to you in allotments, or you just simply can't, or whatever. I don't know about simply can't, but to put some conditions on it, that's one thing. We could give it all to them, and then what are they going to do with it? They're going to buy U.S. products. Maybe even buy some companies or whatever. And we could stop them. We could tax them. We could increase our productivity. Maybe we have plenty of labor sitting around doing nothing. We have plenty of labor that's miserable and would rather be doing other things. So maybe we could handle it. So whatever is the case, it is true that we have plenty of tools at our disposal to be able to control that situation so that it doesn't cause a problem. We create the currency. We can give as much as we want, as long as we're responsible. And in this situation, we can handle it. All right, so that's the debt. I don't know as much about that as I would like, but balanced budget amendment. For those who don't understand modern money, I'm telling you that the balanced budget amendment is permanent and devastating austerity for the people. And the question I would ask someone that truly doesn't know what this is about yet is why? Why is a balanced budget devastating, and a balanced budget amendment would be devastating and permanent austerity for the people? Why? Excuse me. And the answer is because if I'm the federal government, I spend $100 into the economy. A balanced budget, by definition, means that every dollar I spend, I have to tax back. So if I spend $100 into the economy, then what do I have to tax back? I have to tax back exactly $100 in April. So if you're the people, I give you $100, and then I say give it all back. Is that good for the people? And the answer is, of course, no. I give them something and I immediately take it back. Americans can't save, they can't invest, they can't spend unless they gut their savings and their existing investments or squeeze it out of somebody else somehow. So a balanced budget amendment means the government that cannot do anything for the people. It gives the people nothing to save and to invest. And the deficit and the balanced budget and the surplus are all myopically and twisted focus on only the federal government. It's like saying that I only care about the finances, the bank account of the parent, and I don't care about any of the children, all 320 million children. I don't care about any of them, and I don't care about the family or the country as a whole. All I care about is the bank account of the federal government, the parents in this analogy, and they don't even have a bank account. The federal government doesn't even have a bank account. Conceptually, they don't need the money. So what is it to say that it just makes no sense? I lost it a little bit there. So a balanced budget amendment. The federal government spends $100 into the economy, gives it to the people and the states and the companies, taxes back $100. Not good. Surplus. Bill Clinton had a surplus at the end of his presidency. So he instructed the federal government or cooperated with the federal government to have a surplus. And this was hailed as such responsibility. It was so praised when Clinton left office with a surplus. And then I believe pretty soon after there was a recession. Why? Because the federal government spent $100 into the economy and then said, you know what? I'm going to tax you $120. So not only am I giving to you and taking it all back, I am also telling you to dip into your savings, dip into your investments, and because you have to pay me more. So it is taking from the people. So a deficit is the opposite. A deficit is I give $100 to create $100 in programs, and then I tax 60. And now the people still have 40 in their pockets. So deficit is, we're told, is irresponsible. It's actually critical for the people to have things, to be given things from the government. Surplus, we're told, is responsible, and it actually just steals from the people at high speed. And the same with a balanced budget amendment. It gives the people nothing. It doesn't steal from their bank accounts because they don't have to gut it to pay even higher taxes, but they still have to take from the bank account in order to just survive, to buy what they need. So it does not allow the people to save or invest. All right, I'm going to take a break, look through your comments, see if there's anything. And thank you, Chai. You are welcome. Nice to hear that. Does everyone have... Yeah, I mean, whenever they... Well, we'll get into that. Petrodollar, I don't know the petrodollar. I know it's nonsense, but I don't know what it is, so I cannot speak on that. Okay, I don't see that many questions, but there's a lot here. Okay. All right, so that's basically, the core of it. That's basically the core of it. And now it's like dealing with the consequences of that. So for example, Donald Trump says we have to pay for the wall. Actually, Donald Trump says Mexico's going to pay for the wall. But now he's changing that, Democrats are saying, oh, we'll help you pay for the wall. We'll give you $21 billion. But now we understand that creating money at the federal level is just a choice. It's just a choice. A child can get a piece of construction paper and they can choose to draw a penny. They can choose to draw a dollar. They can choose to draw a $100 bill. They can choose to draw a $1 trillion bill. Federal government can do exactly the same thing. Bernie Sanders saying that the Social Security must be saved, and we can do that by raising the cap, eliminating the cap, FICA, eliminating the cap on FICA. So currently everyone pays into Social Security to help pay for Social Security, which now we know doesn't quite make sense anymore, but that is what it's for. But that cap on the FICA tax ends at around $200,000. So billionaires and millionaires don't have to pay anything beyond that $200,000 slice. Any percentage on what they make above $200,000, which is obscene. It's obscene. And that cap absolutely should be lifted. Actually, that cap, the FICA tax, should be eliminated because Social Security is a federal program and therefore does not need any income from the people. So why was the FICA tax created to begin with is a really interesting question, which I'm not going to get into now. I'll leave that for you. Why does the FICA tax exist to begin with if federal programs do not need any income? But this tax, this FICA tax, Bernie Sanders says we must eliminate the cap on FICA in order to save Social Security because it is running out of money, which makes no sense at the federal level. And we do need to eliminate that cap. In fact, we need to eliminate the tax entirely. But we need to eliminate the cap, not because we need the money, but because it's unfair, it's immoral, it's unjust, it's not right for the poor, for this regressive tax on the poor when the rich don't have to do anything. They don't have to pay anything into this. What we really should do is eliminate the tax entirely because it's not used for anything. So Social Security. I don't have this exactly right. I know that this is I am missing some of the technicalities of this, but I think conceptually, at the very least, it is on the right path and it gives the right idea, which is Social Security is running out of money. That's what they say. Social Security is running out of money. And we all know now that the federal government doesn't need any money to pay for federal programs. So the Social Security fund doesn't have a pot of money that is going to be used in the future for senior citizens. That's not how it works. So what the Social Security Administration is when the Social Security bill was created by, I believe, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, that authorized the Social Security Administration the right, the ability to create the currency in order to give benefits to senior citizens. So they became a currency issuer for a very narrow purpose. So they can give, there is no reason why they can't give benefits to anyone in any amount. So to say that the Social Security Administration is running out of money does not make sense. Now again, I know that there is something technically wrong about that. I don't understand it totally, but I think that is close enough for our purposes. So the Social Security Administration, by the Social Security Bill in 1935, whatever, gave Congress authorized the Social Security Administration to create the currency for a very narrow and specific purpose, which is to dole out benefits to senior citizens, which means that it makes no sense to say that Social Security is running out of money, because there is no pile of money for it to run out of. Money is created when the benefits are given to the people. So, anything else? Yes, I know there is, but there's a little bit. Oh, so the big question that's put in front of progressives is, how are you going to pay for it? Yeah, that program sounds great. I'm sure it would really help the people. In fact, I know it would help the people. But how are you going to pay for it? That's the question that we're given. And this goes back to my critical wish that I said at the beginning, which is fight against immoral stuff because it's immoral, not because it's expensive. Fight for progressive policies because they're right and moral and just, not because they're affordable. And most of all, do not link these fights together. Do not link these fights together. And now we're getting into why. So when someone comes to you and they say, that program sounds great, but how are you going to pay for it? And we now know that the federal government will pay for it because they want to, assuming that we had a just, uncorrupted government. The government will pay for these things because they choose to pay for these things. The only limitation on the government has nothing to do with money, because money is just a game on a piece of paper. Draw a $1 trillion bill on a piece of paper. Money has nothing to do with it. Money is not the limiting factor here. The only limiting factor is, do we have enough resources, people, animals, things in the ground, things growing, and time in order to make this policy come to fruition. Medicare for all. We have plenty of people out there, unemployed, willing, wanting, able to help. Service industry is something, the labor is something that is basically infinite. People are born, people can be trained. So resources are not finite. So when someone tells you, how are you going to pay for it? First of all, notice that question never comes up for the military. That question never comes up with tax breaks. I mean, there was some discussion of deficits and all that, but we know deficits is nonsense in the way that it's being portrayed in the media and by our politicians. So how are you going to pay for it is only applied to discussions for the powerless, programs for the powerless. It is never applied to programs for the powerful. We increased the funding for the military for a single year by around $70 billion. They have $700 billion for the military for a single year. 1.5 trillion, whatever, tax breaks for millionaires, and that was a foregone conclusion before the debate ever started. And taxes weren't raised on us to pay for the military, for this military increase. So where did that come from? Where did the bailout in 2009 come from? $12 trillion, I believe, was just shoved down banks' throats, not much given to the people. Where did that money come from? Did our taxes have to be raised to pay for that $12 trillion? I don't remember our taxes being raised for that. So this pay for question encourages those two fights to be linked together. Encourages the fight against the immoral and the fight for the moral. It encourages those two fights to be linked together. Because if we can link those together, if the powerful can get us to link these fights together, we must decrease the military because we need that money in order to pay for Medicare for all. We must increase taxes on the rich because we need that money to pay for Medicare for all. That means we will never get Medicare for all, ever. Because what that does is it pits the powerless against the powerful. And it says the powerless cannot get anything they need until the powerful give us the money in order to make it happen. And we now know that for federal programs, that we don't need the money. We don't need the money. And if we say that we need to decrease the military because we should be instead be paying that, using that money to pay for helping, curing poverty and the Flint pipes and Medicare for all, then we are pitting the powerless against the powerful. And that is a situation where the powerless always lose. Every time. And that's why we don't have Medicare for all. And that's why we don't have any of these programs, is because we have been so trained to make it a prerequisite to get the money from the powerful, the military, the rich, in order to get these programs for the poor, for the powerless. And that link is the biggest mistake that the progressive movement makes, is linking these two fights together. So I just saw a video by Graham Elwood that said, we're making new military jets at $500 million a pop, and we're making, or $500 million a pop, and we're making 20 of them. So that's a lot of billions of dollars. And then you go into, and what could we use that money for? We could fix all the pipes in Flint. We could, give a year of free college. We could pay for Medicare for all. But no, they want to make their military, their airplanes that, just to be more belligerent and bullies in the world. And this fight is right, and this fight is right. But linking those two fights together is killing the progressive movement. The most prominent progressive media people, the Young Turks, Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kulinski. There's a wonderful podcast called Congressional Dish. She doesn't know MMT. She says PAYGO is very important to her. You can't spend until you find the money at the federal level, which we know now makes no sense. Aside from that MMT misunderstanding, it is a wonderful podcast. It's really actually an extraordinary podcast, which I recommend, Congressional Dish by Jen Briney. But this linking of these two fights together, fighting against injustices, fighting for justices, is killing the movement, because we spend all of our time preaching for Medicare for all and all these programs, and we fight so hard for it, and we articulate so well what the problem is with our current healthcare system. We articulate so well what Medicare for all should be. But then when we go to Congress and we fight for it, we fall for the pay for trap. How are you going to pay for it? And then immediately the conversation stops being what's wrong with our current system. The conversation stops being what should we be fighting for, and it turns into, how dare you take money from the military? You don't care about our national security. How dare you take money from the wealthy? You don't care about success. And besides, they're the ones that create the jobs. How are we going to have jobs? The conversation switches from what's important to something that completely sabotages the movement. So we fight 95% of the fight valiantly and amazingly, and then we reach that final stage where we can go in for the kill and get what we need, and we stab ourselves because we make these mistakes of taking money from the powerful in order to pay for programs for the powerless, which reflects complete misunderstanding of how modern money works. So that is the most important thing to me, is to get the progressive movement to stop linking these fights together. We should fight just as hard against injustices. We should fight just as hard for what's just, what's right. But we must stop pretending that these fights are somehow linked together, that taking money from the powerful is a prerequisite to getting things for the powerless. That, in my opinion, is the biggest mistake that is made by most progressives. I've even seen Nina Turner, one of my progressive idols. I gave an interview with her, and I interviewed her in February, and it was a struggle to not cry and break down in front of her. And then a couple weeks ago, I saw her send an email for Our Revolution saying Social Security is going to run out of money even sooner. Now we even more need to fight for Medicare for all. And it was just really, really upsetting. And I know that she's not doing it maliciously. Of course she's not doing it maliciously, because most people understand this. This is the way this is the way we've been taught our whole lives. Of course it's not malicious. But we have got to, especially to the most prominent members of the progressive movement and the progressive media, who have the ears of and eyes of millions of people, we have got to teach them that these fights must be separated. They have to be separated. This talk about taxes pay for federal spending. It all starts with the seed of federal taxes do not pay for federal spending. That is the seed. If you can remember that, then you know everything you need to know. You just have to think it through logically. If federal taxes, only the federal level, if federal taxes do not pay for federal spending, and they don't, if federal taxes do not pay for federal spending, really the seed is the federal government can create their own money. Federal government can create its own money. It doesn't need income, therefore it doesn't need taxes, and therefore we don't need the money from the rich in order to help the powerless. I think that's actually reaching the end of what I know. So let me look through the comments and see if there's any feedback. Yes, Phil Cleves says, I just want to say that the new people here, MMT is not political. It's not Democratic, it's not Republican, it's not Libertarian, it is nothing. You can use MMT for evil, you can use MMT for good, you can use MMT to push libertarian values, you can push it for Republican values, for progressive values. You can use it or not use it as you like. But modern money is not a program. It's not a recommended process. It is a knowledge. It is a thing of knowledge. It is a program of knowledge. It's not the right term. It is no different than biology. It is no different than chemistry, algebra. You either understand it or you don't understand it. No matter what we do or don't do, MMT doesn't change any of that. I have a libertarian, someone who follows Citizens Media TV, and he's hardcore libertarian. And he just recently said, if Bitcoin becomes popular, then MMT won't be needed anymore. And it doesn't quite make sense. I mean, if Bitcoin becomes so popular that it overtakes the government and the government becomes, minuscule, then, I guess that makes sense. But MMT is, whether Bitcoin is successful or not successful, whether you believe it in or not, MMT is and has always been, because we have been off the gold standard since August of 1971. It has always been this way for our whole lives. Let's see. Mark, Kathy, we understand. Yes, neoliberal propaganda. Neoliberals want to empower corporations, to empower their donors. And Medicare for all. This is a big thing. Why don't we have Medicare for all? these myths reinforce the fact, make it even easier for them to not give us Medicare for all, which is, just a moment. Medicare for all, why don't we have it? Caitlin Johnstone put out a really, really interesting article a few months ago, and she said that that power is relative. Power is relative. You can't be powerful unless other people are less powerful than you. You can't stay powerful unless you make sure that other people remain less powerful than you. So the powerful want to keep themselves powerful and keep the powerless powerless. So we don't just not have Medicare for all because they don't want us to have health care. We don't just not have Medicare for all because they want to profit off of us, and they do. That's a big one. But I think the biggest reason why they don't give us Medicare for all is because if we had Medicare for all, we would be unchained from our jobs. And if we, sorry about that. If we were unchained from our jobs, then we would be able to run for office and to take over them, take their spots over. And I believe that that's what they don't want. They don't give us Medicare for all, not because they want to profit off of us. That's a big one. They do. I mean, that's number two. They especially don't want to give us Medicare for all because it keeps the powerless powerless. It keeps the powerful powerful. And what all of these things, I think to conclude, then I'm going to look through your comments, but to conclude what I have to say is our government tells us that, I so wish that I could give you these things, Medicare for all, free college. I so wish that I could give you these things. I totally understand how important these things are, how much they would benefit you, but I just can't because we can't afford it, because we have to be responsible. And what the truth is, now that we understand modern money, is they can, and they have always been able to, give us these programs. We don't have to take it from the military. We don't have to take it from the rich. They can have their toys, at least temporarily. But we need to compartmentalize these fights. We can't link these fights. They can give us Medicare for all, free college, and fix Flint's pipes, and cure poverty and homelessness, and still have an excessive military, and still give tax breaks to the millionaires. We can have it all at the same time, at least temporarily. So the truth is not that they really wish that they could give us these things, but they can't. The truth is that they just don't want to give it to us because they want to keep the powerful powerful and they want to keep the powerless powerless. It's, of course, is my speculation. And the Congress, the national federal representatives, are instructed to do this by their donors. Pretty obvious. So that's the last thing I wanted to say. So if we want nice things, we need to really be careful of avoiding this, taking the money from the rich as a prerequisite. We need to stop linking these fights together. Fight just as hard against injustices, fight just as hard for what's right, but stop using this language that pretends that taxes pay for federal spending, which it doesn't, and that it's a prerequisite for taking the money from the rich before we can have stuff for the powerless. Let me look through your comments. Oh yeah, when you pay taxes, it's just no bit different than giving a movie ticket to a movie theater. They just rip it up and throw it away. Let's see. Gosh, there's so many comments. This is a good problem to have, but oh yeah. So I think the ultimate goal of the powerful in buying politicians, creating laws that benefit them, creating more and more and more inequality, is getting the government to stop giving the people programs for free when they could profit off of these programs. But it's more than just profiting. It's power. It is more than just profiting. It is them becoming the law, becoming the government. So if we don't have health care from the government for free, then we have to have health care from private industry. And they are not as susceptible or applicable, whatever the term is, to federal law. So now they make the decisions for us. They decide based on profit if we should have a procedure or if we should not have a procedure. Private schools. If we have a public documents, what's it called? Open records requests, public records requests. So public entities like public schools, colleges, public colleges, you have the right to request records from public entities. So if a governmental entity is a school, public school, you can request documents from them. Now if we have private schools, can we request documents from them? They're a private entity. They're not under the government. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. But clearly it is a far step away from, it's another example of a kind of a law, a transparency that takes away from the government, moves it over to private industry, not just for profit, but for power. So they can make the rules. They can become the government. So let's see if you have any questions. All right, I'm going to look through these later. And animals, I'm not sure. Anitra, animals. Do you mean like animals is a resource? I mean, that's just labor. People, animals is an actual, a real resource. Time, things in the ground, things that grow. These are all real resources. I don't see. Congressional Dish. It's an excellent podcast. So what she does is she reads a bill. She reads an entire bill, like 1,000 pages, whatever it is. She spends a month researching a bill, and then she spends 2 hours or plus giving you all the details about that bill. The most recent one that I heard was on the Bank Lobbyist Act and everything that's in it, and a few good things and a whole lot of bad things. She did one on the history of Puerto Rico and the PROMESA board. Really, really incredible. She does not get MMT. I wrote a letter to her trying to say, hey, MMT, Pagos doesn't make sense, and she didn't take it well. But still an excellent podcast. TYT, the Young Turks, they are my primary sources of truth. They don't know MMT. They constantly say that taxes pay for federal taxes pay for federal spending, and that we should be using, our taxes instead of the military. We should be using it. Please go. Sorry. We should be using it for this instead of for this, and it's just the pinned tweet, Citizens Media TV on Twitter. My pinned tweet talks all about that, how the progressive media is just linking these fights together over and over and over again. And it is just completely sabotaging the movement. They say everything awesome. And then, that final step, instead of going in for the kill, we hurt ourselves. Let's see. I'm sorry, hold on a moment. No, I'm sorry, I can't. I really need you to go. I'm talking to like 30 people, and this is embarrassing, and I need you to go. Okay, federal taxes do not pay for federal spending. Bernie has an egg allergy. Goodness, I do not know. Not sure what that has to do with modern money. I would love to talk to Caitlin Johnstone. I would love to talk to these people. I would love to talk to Nina Turner. Oh my gosh, give me 2 hours with Nina Turner. I would love to talk to these people. How do I reach them? I certainly don't do it by myself. If people are willing to help share stuff so I can reach them or someone in Real Progressives can reach them, I would love nothing more than to teach these leaders of the progressive movement, these truly progressive journalists about this. And I believe, and I'm going to get the feedback, but I think that I can handle this, getting people over the hump, this initial hump, pretty well. And I know my limitations. I know what I know. I know what I don't know. I'm not going to pretend, to teach things that I don't understand. When they exceed what I do have to teach them, which they probably will do rather quickly, there are plenty of people out there, economists, people that in Real Progressives that are ready and waiting to teach them the more advanced stuff. And I'm sure I got some stuff wrong, especially about Social Security and the debt and so on, but I know that I'm really close, and I know that I have the core details pretty solidly. And most Americans and most progressives do not know what I know, and I have something to teach them. They have tons to teach me, but I have this to teach them. Thank you, Teresa. It's very nice to hear that. Do you know the site to enroll for the MMT conference? No, I don't. No, I don't. I just posted about it in the group maybe 2 or 3 days ago. It's enrollment starts in July, and it's taking place in, I believe, the last 3 days in September in New York. I'm going to really try and go. I don't know. I assume it costs money. And I know that there's a course. There's, I believe, a free course. I already bought the book. I don't have time to read the thing, but I already bought the book on my tablet. There is a course being taught online about modern money, and there's a true textbook, a real textbook about it, heavy duty. I don't know how to find out about that either at the moment. It's not great. As soon as people see that, they say, I got to learn something. Why? I don't understand that, Michael. I wish you would elaborate. You say, even #LearnMMT is not great. As soon as people see that, they say, I got to learn something. Ain't nobody got time for that. I mean, that's what the powerful want. What people don't even know that MMT exists, modern money exists, let alone do they know that it is absolutely one of the most critical things. This is just as important. Okay, I voted Democrat my whole life because I was told that Democrats were the good guys, thanks to Kim that help me form these words a little clearer. I was completely asleep until I found Bernie Sanders in August of 2015. I never heard of him before. I was asleep my whole life. I was on depression and anxiety medication for a number of years before I discovered him. Then I saw him in August of 2015, and I got off of them once and for all. He taught me that the core of what he taught me is that money in politics is the root of all evil. And didn't just teach me that. He really taught that. What does that mean? Why is that? Why did that happen? What do we do to get from here to there? And what he is to me is reading glasses. I know that's silly at first, but give me a minute. I've always had perfect vision my whole life. I mean perfect, like better than perfect vision. I've had extraordinary vision my whole life. Past 4 years, all of a sudden I noticed that, not a big deal, but small print is, starting to become a struggle. Not horrible, but it's a struggle. And then just a few months ago, I put on 1.25 reading glasses for the first time. And I look at my phone, and it's like I got a new phone. It's like I got a brand new phone for the first time. And what I realized was that I have been seeing blurry for like 4 years. And I had no idea. And what Bernie Sanders is to me is that he taught me, and I assume a lot that are watching right now, that things are horrible. This is why they are horrible. And this is how they could be good again. And this is how good they could be. So to me, he is like those reading glasses. He taught us that things are not as good as we think they are. This is how good they could be. This is how we get there from here. I had something else I wanted to say. I don't recall at the moment. Oh, Adrian. I would kill to be able to teach this to Nina if she gave me 2 hours, or even just an hour. I interviewed her in February. I spoke to her for a good 15 minutes. It was awesome. I have it on my thing. And as I said before, it was a struggle to emotionally hold myself together because I was so, I just admire her so much. Okay. I would love to talk with Caitlin Johnstone. All these people. I would just kill for that opportunity. But there's so many people in Real Progressives that would do a great job at this. Geoff Ginter taught me what I know. I heard, a friend, Kathleen Tremblay. I know her on Twitter. She has in her description, she says, if you private message me and I will teach you modern money, MMT in an hour. Give me an hour and I will teach it to you, I promise. And so I wrote her and I said, I would love to talk to you about this. We had a great conversation. It's going to be released soon. And she, oh, damn it, I just forgot what I was going to say. It'll come to me. I forget. Thank you, Trisha. I appreciate that. Anyone. I would love the opportunity to reach these people and to, these other people that I admire and I look up to. I'm sure there would be plenty of people that would love to teach Nina Turner and Jimmy Dore and just Caitlin Johnstone and just all of these people. Lee Camp. All of these people that have so many people's ears and they do such a great job for 95% of what they do. But then that final step to actually get what we want, it's completely sabotaged because they link those two fights together. They both pretend that federal taxes pay for federal spending, which we now know is not the case. Let's see. MMT lens. Mark Fabian, I was hoping for an MMT lens analogy. Good. I mean, the Bernie Sanders thing is not exactly... Oh, so Bernie Sanders, the reading glasses. Bernie Sanders taught us that money in politics is the root of all evil. Okay? That is like the first waking up lesson that I had. And the second lesson of that magnitude that I had was Modern Money. February of this year. Modern Money. It's related, but not directly related. Understanding modern money is what makes it possible to get rid of money in politics more quickly. So that's the second sort of waking up lesson that I had. The third waking up lesson that I had, which I'm still learning, all these things, but I'm still learning, is Manufactured Consent by Noam Chomsky. There is a 3-hour documentary called Manufacturing Consent, which is a documentary on Noam Chomsky and all of his philosophies. I've only seen the first hour, and it completely changed me. So money in politics is the root of all evil, which set me up for all these pay for questions. Why is this such a big deal? Why is this such a complicated, infinite thing? That led me to Modern Money. And however it happened, I guess why they're miseducating led me to Manufactured Consent by Noam Chomsky. That 3-hour documentary, I can't recommend it highly enough. It is mind-blowing. How does a country that does not use force to control its people control its people? And this is through the media and education and miseducating with money. That's how they control the people, non-coercively, as opposed to a military dictatorship where they can just, put you in jail or shoot you or whatever. So yes, okay. All right, so I think that's it. I would greatly appreciate, not just for myself, but yes, I would love to be able to talk to all these people and sit down with them for, I'll say, an hour. It really requires 2, but I'll say for an hour to sit down with Nina Turner and just all these people that I admire so much. Jimmy Dore, I would love to sit down with Jimmy Dore. He is actually showing signs. He's actually showing signs of understanding modern money. He just recently said, we make the money, we need to deficit spend when there is a crisis to give more money to the people. Tax less
from the people because they need to save more. There's not enough demand. We need to increase demand by taxing them less, which has them keep more money. So he's actually starting to say modern money stuff, which is really exciting. The Young Turks is just, I don't see any progress at all, just none. Congressional Dish I mentioned, it's wonderful, except she did not receive my bringing up the subject very well, unfortunately. So yeah, I would selfishly love to be able to reach Nina Turner and all of these people, Caitlin Johnstone and Lee Camp and Jimmy Dore and Graham Elwood and all of these people. I would love to reach them, but I cannot do it myself. I need people to help, but I don't need to be the only one to do that. There are so many people that are ready and able to teach modern money to people, to all these people, and there should be some way for a team of teachers to be able to reach these prominent figures in the movement and to be able to sit down with them and to teach them. We have to be, I don't know how that's going to happen, but it is absolutely something that I cannot do myself. But I am ready to actually sit down with them if I can get their attention and get their trust through other people vouching or organizations vouching or sharing or whatever it is. So yeah, Dave Pilkington says, I heard Jimmy Dore say Pago recently. I'm pretty sure he understands. He did an episode on Nancy Pelosi with Pago, and he railed against it. Maybe not for the exact modern money reasons or all of them, but he definitely railed against it. And maybe that actually was the video that said you have to deficit spend. But that may very well have been the video where Jimmy Dore actually was saying, we create the money and therefore you have to deficit spend to get out of crises, and that may very well have been the Pago episode. But yes, he's not all the way there yet. He is making some mistakes still. And me, as someone who only knows this since February, if I can detect these mistakes, then clearly they're pretty basic. He said, yeah, I know. Jimmy Dore, Trisha Roberts says, I am wondering when Jimmy Dore will have on Stephanie Kelton. He said he was going to, but I haven't seen her yet. That is, I have not seen it either, but he's starting to show signs here and there, so maybe he's doing his own research, maybe he's talked to her in private, I don't know. But yeah, I that's true. I have not seen her, and that's really exciting for me, for the potential to see them talking to each other. And I really hope it's like an hour kind of a thing. It's not just, a 5-minute thing. Okay. I'm going to go up these comments one more time. Abby Martin. I know the name. I know that she's a journalist. I don't care who I talk to. If someone's open-minded and willing to learn, I would absolutely love to sit down with them for 2 hours. I'll say 1 hour. I know everyone's busy. Ideally, it would really be a 2-hour thing. That's what it was for me with Geoff Ginter. We have our 2 live streams that are on Real Progressives, and I put on my podcast of our first 2 conversations together. It's actually, I spoke to him on the phone in private at first, and he just dragged me down the rabbit hole, and then we did a live stream soon after to work through all of that, and then we did a second live stream a month later to work through some more of the details. To have these conversations, like if someone saw me or someone like me sitting down with Nina Turner and walking her through this, how much of a learning tool, excuse me, getting rid of a notification here. How much of a learning tool would that be to see Nina Turner learning modern money from someone like me? And again, it's like, you should be skeptical. You should go and learn. You should go and do your homework. You should not just believe me. You should find out the truth for yourself. But during this conversation, I need you to be open-minded. And to see, and for other people that admire Nina Turner or to admire all these journalists and so on, to watch this conversation happen would be an unbelievable learning tool to model that learning. And that's what it was like for people, MMT knowledgeable people, to watch me go over that hump. That was a very exciting conversation. I mean, as someone who was, going over the hump, and I was watching all these comments coming in of all this excitement of, yeah, you're getting it, that's right. It's an incredible, incredible learning tool. And tomorrow, Kim, if you're still here, My discussion with Kim about how teaching her modern money that she didn't really know before. I was a more loose version of what I spoke about tonight. I just find it to be an incredible opportunity to teach people. If the person is brave enough to do it in public, at least significantly, for other people that admire that person to witness that process, would spread the knowledge like wildfire. But the critical part is to start that, is to get in the door so that you can meet them and earn their trust and be able to sit down with them, ideally for 2 hours, but at least definitely 1 hour. Abby Martin, I am not as familiar with her. I know she's a journalist. I would absolutely love to meet her. There are so many people that I know that I'm sure would love to sit down with these kinds of people. I absolutely selfishly myself would love to do it. I am not going to pretend that I'm the only one that's capable. There are plenty of people that would love to do this, but I in particular am interested in reaching these people that have the ears of so many. So yes, if you can get me in touch with these people, please, please, please do. Okay, I think we're getting close to the end. I'm just going to go through this one more. So what's the takeaway? Okay, Michael Campbell. So what's the takeaway? I mean, because I am good at propaganda, but it's hard to teach people MT because it's complicated. It takes learning, and I don't think people are in the mood to read. They have been dumbed down, and they got a lot of problems. How do you put MMT on a bumper sticker? And I know the answer, and the answer is you don't. You don't. You don't put it on a bumper sticker because it is an incredibly difficult mind bender because of how badly we've been miseducated. We have to uneducate and then re-educate correctly. And it doesn't fit on a bumper sticker. And so this reminds me of the fight of the media. CNN. It's not media, it's propaganda. It's state-owned, they push what the state wants them to push. Don't talk about Bernie. If they do, it's bad. They don't talk about progressive stuff, and if they do, it's bad. How are you going to pay for it? Some people want to reach their grandmas who are sitting stuck watching CNN and thinking that it's truth. So they want CNN to broadcast their messages because they want to reach their grandma who is stuck sitting and watching CNN thinking that it's real news. And that's just like these people who don't have time to learn because they've been miseducated. I don't think people are in the mood to read. They have been dumbed down, and they have a lot of problems. Of course, they have to put problems in our way to make things difficult. So we don't have the time to fight. We don't have the time to learn. We don't have the time to stand up, of course. But for me, I am not bothering with CNN to try and get through the Funhouse Hall of Mirrors to reach Grandma. Excuse me. She is lost, and I'm letting her go. What I want to do is to make new media shine brighter to enhance that, which is why I want to reach the Young Turks, who for me is my primary source of truth, and Jimmy Dore is those two are my primary sources of truth. But they are miseducating the people on economics. So I want to focus on enhancing new media to make that shine brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter so that Grandma might suddenly someday notice it shining brighter than CNN and might choose to take a look at it. And of course, that's why we have net neutrality has been repealed, to try and cut that off. Bernie Sanders is running next year. Net neutrality. Then Bernie Sanders, much of his success, if not most of his success, was because of the internet. Net neutrality is now repealed. What in the world is going to happen next year with Bernie Sanders and the internet and his campaign? Who knows? But I am choosing to focus on enhancing the positive instead of trying to fix the negative. I'm going to deal with what I can handle. I am going to let go of what I can't handle. But there are plenty of people who actually want to try and change CNN and protest CNN, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's not how I choose to spend my energy, but it's good that we have people that want to approach it this way. It's good that we have people like me that want to approach it a different way, We need to fight this from all different angles. So everyone fights the battle in their own ways, and we try and achieve it, that way. So back to Michael Campbell, he says, how do we fit MMT in a bumper sticker? We don't fit MMT on a bumper sticker. We let go of the people that require MMT to be on a bumper sticker in order to learn it. That's what I'm going to do. Maybe some people might try and fit it on a bumper sticker and might try to show it to these people to try and get them to learn it. That's fine. You are welcome to do that. I encourage you to do that if you feel that that's the best way to handle it. I am not spending my energy on trying to fit MMT on a bumper sticker. I am going to try and find people to sit down and spend an hour or 2 hours and learn this, because it is going to save the world if we don't. You know what I mean? If we don't learn this, we are going to keep walking towards the abyss. We can keep preaching for Medicare for all and for free college and all these things as much as we want. If we keep linking these fights together, of this fight for injustice must happen as a prerequisite to getting programs for the powerless, we must take the money from the powerless in order to get, before we can even consider programs for the powerless. We've lost. So I am not going to try and reach those people who are not interested in being reached. At least, the masses who require MMT to be on a business card, on an index card, when it is absolutely impossible to be put on an index card, a bumper sticker. I am going to try and convince the leaders who have the ears of millions or a lot of people or thousands. I'm going to try and convince them and try and teach them. And that will give me a foot in the door to who they reach, to who they are, watched by. Let's see. Say that 10 times. Oh, I wish you knew what you were talking about. Teresa Sanders, you say that 10 times really fast. I wonder what phrase you're talking about. Looking through the comments. Bernie has an egg allergy. All right, that's the most interesting comment of the night. Phil Cleaves, Bernie has an egg allergy. He's asking that. I don't know where that's from. Oh, wow. Mark Fabian. The other way of saying it is federal spending pays for federal taxation. That is a really interesting way of turning it on its head. Federal taxes do not pay for federal spending. Federal spending pays for federal taxes. That's awesome. I like that. That is really insightful. Yeah, Bernie Sanders, I believe he knows MMT. He had Stephanie Kelton as his advisor in 2016. This is we need to get over being butthurt about Bernie, take the best and leave the rest, which is sort of what I was just talking about CNN and all that stuff. Bumper stickers, putting MMT on a bumper sticker. Teresa Sanders says, Bernie clearly knows MMT. I believe he knows MMT. He knows Stephanie Kelton. He put out a whole pay-for document during the 2016 campaign. It's still on his website. Go to berniesanders.com, and on the issues page, all the way at the bottom, it says how Bernie pays for all of his programs. I memorized that document during 2016. I gave talks about that document, not the document, about Bernie Sanders, and a significant piece was about how do we pay for it. Like every week, twice a week for a while, for a couple of months. I gave speeches or workshops or whatever you call it, talks about Bernie Sanders, significantly based on that document. And that whole document is a sham. It's a sham. It means nothing. We don't need to pay for anything because the government just chooses to pay for it. Federal spending funds federal taxes. That's great. But now he doesn't do that pay for as much. He still sometimes says we must tax the rich in order to X. Let's tax the rich for once and pay for infrastructure. He still does that, but he is not nearly as bad as it was during 2016. And I do think he is finally trying to. He's not teaching modern money, but I think he is much less miseducating about it not putting the pay for out there as much, not talking about the pay for. There was one example of federal job guarantee. Someone asked him, well, how are you going to pay for it, Bernie? And Bernie didn't answer it. He just like walked away. And so the person took that as, oh, well, you know, he's not even going to think of how he's going to pay for it. And of course, we know that you don't even need to think about that. If we want to do it, we do it as the federal government. But now it's, you know, they take that badly, but not as badly as, well, I'm going to pay for it for this and this and this and this and this by raising speculation tax, whatever it is. Now we're no longer talking about the program. Now we're talking about, you know, the injustice from the rich point of view of why we shouldn't do this. So it's actually an improvement. So now he's just, you know, not answering. And so he's being, you know, insulted or he's being denounced because, oh, now he's not even thinking of how to pay for it. But we're not talking about the injustice of taking it from the rich anymore. So this is an improvement. I actually hadn't thought of it like that until I just said it. Oh, and the answer to how you're going to pay for it, how I would say it is, I would love to talk about that. I will talk about that, but not now. Right now, I'm talking about what's wrong with the system and what we need to do to fix the system, what's good about our program that we want and what's wrong with the system. You know, that's the justification for why we need it. I will talk about how to pay for it as long as you want, as much as you want, but not now. And then we would, you know, get together later and talk about modern money. That's what I think the only answer is. It's the only way to deal with it. And Bernie Sanders is honestly the only person that can teach it on a mass scale. I think that's it. Okay, so Kathy, the petrodollar is something you should know about. Kathy Thibault says the Federal Reserve is not under the control of the Congress, which is, of course, exactly opposite of what we're all saying, and that the petrodollar is something that needs to be learned. I don't understand this well enough to be able to, I couldn't be able to have a conversation with this person because I don't know it well enough. But I'm reasonably confident, based on everyone that I'm learning from, that the petrodollar is nothing to worry about, and the Federal Reserve is commanded by the Congress. Yes, there was the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, but it was an act. It wasn't an amendment. It doesn't change the fact that the Constitution still says that the Congress is the monopoly currency issuer, and they instruct the Federal Reserve. And as Geoff Ginter just taught me, even hypothetically, if we don't follow the Constitution and the Federal Reserve is allowed to be in charge somehow, the Congress can come in tomorrow because of the Constitution and say no more. But as we know, the Constitution says that the Congress is the monopoly currency issuer, and nobody else. The Federal Reserve works at the command of the Treasury, which works at the command of the United States Congress. Looking through more comments. I think I'm pretty close to the end. What about the petrodollar? I know it really is not a scary thing. I know it's not that relevant in modern money, but I can't speak on it. I'm not knowledgeable enough. But I know basically I believe it's like a scare tactic as opposed to a real thing that we need to worry about. All right, I think that's all. I'm going to read through all these comments again. Thank you all for sticking with me. I appreciate everything that you've been saying here and listening. So now, I basically have taught you everything that I know, and now it's time to move on to more educated people and the economists. Fidel Kaboub, who just spoke with Steve Gumbine right before I started. He is a modern NMT economist, a modern money economist. Stephanie Kelton, especially Stephanie Kelton. Angry Birds and Deficits is an excellent first talk to listen to, video. Angry Birds and Deficits by Stephanie Kelton. I have a lot of articles linked in the description, which you could read, the Twitter threads link at the end of all the Twitter threads, I have links to tons of other resources such as Angry Birds and Deficits and Stephanie Kelton resources and so on, other videos. So, all right, I think that's it. Thank you very much for listening. How long did we go for? Wow, holy cow, that was a long time. Thank you all for sticking around. Thank you, Rob. Kim, you're still there. Thank you. Thank you for letting me, do my rough take of this with you. Tomorrow, I am releasing a podcast that I did with Kim, which was 2 hours long of basically talking about the same stuff, but I hadn't really, designed it out. But roughly the same that I spoke with her. That's going to be released tomorrow. Petrodollar is a right-wing nickname for the U.S. dollar and is horseshit. That's Dave Pilkington. So, I know I don't know about it, but I know it's a myth, kind of a thing. All right. Thank you very much for listening. This was my first Real Progressive podcast, my first lesson on modern money, and I do lots of interviews on Citizens Media TV, mostly podcasts. And my bread and butter, making a little bit of money, is live streaming meetings, governmental meetings. So thank you for having me. Thank you to Steve Grumbine for allowing me to do this for the first time, for bringing me on board. Thanks to Geoff Ginter for teaching me. Thanks to Kim Niles for being my guinea pig to do this for the first time in person. You'll hear that tomorrow. I'll be releasing that tomorrow as a podcast. And I will see you again. Thanks, everyone. Bye.